Analyzing trailer music is a great way to build on knowledge and understanding of trailer music and trailer music production in general. For this breakdown, I've chosen to look at the Goodbye Christopher Robin trailer. We'll go through the trailer and break down the soundtrack act by act, looking at the music, orchestration, and sound design. If you haven't watched my How to Write Trailer Music video, I'd recommend watching that, as this breakdown frequently refers to the techniques and terminology I discuss in that video. Let's get started and have a look at Act 1.
God bless Mummy. God bless Daddy. God bless Nu. Amen.
Forgotten someone?
Who?
Keep thinking.
Me. I forgot to bless me. God bless me.
A toast to England's
funniest writer, ready to put the smile back on our faces.
What did we fight that war for?
Well, it is over.
What am I doing about it?
You're doing what you're good at, writing plays.
I had enough of making people laugh. I want to make them see. I need to get out of London, somewhere quiet and trying to think for once.
Naturally, Act 1 is very stripped back. It starts with a simple, airy synth pad to establish an atmosphere. I like the fact that the synth cuts out suddenly to make room for dialogue. Usually when things cut out like this, the cuts are punctuated with booms, hits, or rises. But in this case, because we're in Act 1, where sound and music sits at a low intensity, it's just a pad that stops suddenly, and that's all we need. This little stop in the music does a great job of adding suspense and keeps our attention. After this, the intensity is built up when the synth comes back in, laid with a sub-hit, what sounds like string harmonics or strings playing sordino, and a piano playing sustained chords every half bar.
You're going to live here. This is your new home.
Mummy says you're writing a book to stop people going to war. I think your book is a jolly good idea.
You're the only one that does.
I'd really like if you wrote a book for me. I'd definitely read it.
Shall we go for a walk?
Aren't you working?
It doesn't seem likely.
Could you think of a good name for a donkey?
Eeyore. They'll be gone in a minute.
Bees are good, aren't they? They just want to make honey.
Yes, I completely forgot about bees.
Life is full of frightful things. The great thing is to find something to be happy about.
I think I've got something for us.
I really love this act because the music is so simple but complex at the same time. The simplicity comes from the choice of instrumentation used to build this act. The complexity comes from the piano arrangement itself. Pace is immediately introduced at the start of this act so that the intensity at the end of Act 1 is maintained. A piano playing an eighth note arpeggio rhythm through a chord progression is what maintains this intensity. The steady rhythm of the arpeggio and progression is really infectious and invites you to fixate on the visuals. Then the arpeggio ends halfway through the act to make room for dialogue. When the music comes back in, the pace and tension is built up further. The piano is playing in a higher register with a faster paced rhythm. It plays eighth note triplets in the higher register and the eighth note arpeggio pulse we heard before in the lower register, i.e. right hand and left hand playing. Played with this new piano groove is the same synth we heard earlier and a slow moving string section weaving short melodic lines from chord to chord. There's also a couple of sub-hits placed along this part of Act 2. But that's it for Act 2. The arrangement is so simple but effective. Let's look at Act 3.
Ernest and I are putting your bear in a book. We're putting you in it too.
What will you call me in the book?
Your real name, Christopher Robin.
Let's be hunters in the snow. Come on, don't get frostbite.
The creatures in the story are toys. They're toys, but the woods are real.
Winnie the Pooh.
It's rather...
Inexplicable.
Yes.
Evening News will put Christopher on the front page.
Why does everyone like Winnie the Pooh so much?
After the war, there was so much sadness. Then Winnie the Pooh came along.
Shall we go to the woods?
I've got heaps of writing to do, I'm afraid.
He has to be allowed to grow up. He has to know he's important.
Radio interview, newspaper interview. He can't do all this.
He's rather good at it.
He's a little boy. Come on then.
Where to?
Home, I should think.
There's a section in this act, about 10 seconds, where there is so much sidechain compression going on between the dialogue and music that the production and music composition is totally inaudible. So we'll skip that section altogether. So we come into this act with a cymbal swell, and then we're greeted with a female choir playing a staccato-like melody. A piano plays and sustains full chords every half bar, a percussive stick sound keeping a pulse with the female choir, and a string section underneath. What's interesting is the pace of the start of Act 3 is actually more tame and slower than the end of Act 2, where we have those racing eighth note triplets. Theoretically, we don't want to be slowing the pace and intensity down in Act 3. We want to be building constantly. But the reason this works is because of the orchestration. There's a lot more going on sonically and harmonically in Act 3 than in Act 2, so the composer can afford to bring down the pace but still maintain and build intensity with the addition of more instruments, harmony and melody. The strings get louder and more expressive in bars 2 to 4, leading us into a low percussion hit, accenting the 1, followed by the low string section playing a 16th note arpeggio, and the choir now collectively sings and sustains chord voicings. So we've already built up the intensity from the opening 4 bars by slightly adjusting the orchestration and the parts they play. This arrangement goes on for another 5 bars or so, with the strings becoming more prominent and expressive, with high strings collectively playing a chord progression in legato. We also have a bit of sound design with a gentle whoosh that comes in and out halfway through to suggest change and movement in the music and story. The intensity is built up again with the sound of a low percussive hit and the introduction of more strings. Some low and high strings play that chugging 16th pattern I mentioned, their melodies differing slightly, and then we have high and low strings playing legato with the low strings playing a simple melody, leading us into a higher intensity in the next measure. We can also hear the introduction of the brass section. There's a gentle brass crescendo following the same melody line as the low strings. The intensity is raised again, starting with another low percussion roll into a hit, and the strings become louder with more attack, playing a similar 16th note arpeggio progression to before. The choir opens up further, becoming brighter in tone and louder with more harmonic content. Then we have the low percussion come in to play a 16th note crescendo, leading us into all that dialogue and sidechaining I talked about. You can still hear the music and its changes underneath the dialogue, but it's not enough to really take it apart. So when the music finally does come back in, we have our strings and choir that we've heard consistently, but this time they're playing at the limits of their dynamic range, along with a brass section that we heard the beginnings of earlier in this act. We also have those classic trailer drums playing a 16th note rhythm pattern. What really adds to this final push in intensity is the melodic and diatonic rise to reach and resolve on that upper octave and finish on beat 3. Leaving beat 4 for some final words from our characters, and then we have a short ending with legato strings going from the 7 and resolving to the 1. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're getting value out of these videos.